Shakespearean romance. Shakespeare, in the closing years of the 16th century, wrote some plays which were neither comedies nor tragedies, but they were a mixture of both. Besides other characteristics, these plays may be called as romances under this category. Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, and The Tempest are included in this category. The romances to some extent are like tragicomedy that owes its rise in England to Beaumont and Fletcher. The romances have following characteristics. As the name suggests, romance has very little to do with the actual real world. Most of the actions in the romance take place in an imaginary world not known to the traditional geography. Even if the actions take place in the known country, the period of the action is so remote that it assumes a romantic color. The same is true of the plot of the romance. It is very fanciful and rather from out of this mundane world. The plot has nothing to do with the cause and effect. In normal comedy or tragedy, it would not be accepted, but in a romance it fits in quite normally. The incidents like the abduction of the princes in Cymbeline or concealment in The Winter's Tale for years together are possible only in the romance. Magic, complications of plot, fantastic voyage, prophetic oracles, and anachronism are possible only in the romance. It is a warm world of imagination and fantasy where the cold light of reason does not enter. The dramatist is totally free to have a free play to his imagination. Most of the romances have their plots and stories borrowed from historical sources. The story of Cymbeline is taken from the Decameron composed by Giovanni Boccaccio. And it is presumed that The Tempest is based on the stories of adventures narrated by some sailors coming from the West Indies. Thus, Shakespeare is not credited with originality so far as the source of the story is concerned. Therefore, George Bernard Shaw is critical of Shakespeare. One of the most important characteristics of the romance is the dreamlike atmosphere, which lends unique charm to these plays, as has been said earlier. The actions of these plays take place in an imaginary world. It is the atmosphere that is generally associated with the fairy tale. The most important part of regular tragedies and comedies like characterization is not so important in the romance. The characters are typed or they do not have strong personality of the earlier plays. Both the heroines and villains are weak characters that cannot be compared with the strong personality like Portia or Iago. Instead of fine characterization, there is artificiality. No romance is complete without the supernatural element. The oracles, the participation of supernatural beings add otherworldly touch to the play. The most important aspect of the romances is the dialogue with excessive use of the lengthy speeches. It is essential in order to make the complex plot intelligible to the readers and spectators. Thus, the good dialogues became the part and parcel of the romance. Finally, there is a spirit of reconciliation. The dominance of forgiveness and goodwill seems to be the motto of Shakespeare's later plays. Thus, there is moral, spiritual and ethical necessity which is found in the romances.